Good morning. Currency, it's the largest and most liquid market in the world. I'm Brigid Taylor and this is Currency Wars. Today I'm joined by John Cairns from RMB and Luke Alers from Kaon Capital. But first we're going to have a quick look and see what's happening in the markets. Oil prices are slightly better this month after the momentum of the Saudi Arabians agreeing not to increase supply ahead of the meeting with OPEC, where it is expected that members will discuss coordinating the actions going forward. Meanwhile, political tensions in South Africa and Futuregrowth's bombshell decision to suspend funding to the 6 parastatals, top parastatals, has seen the rand lose some R1.50 in August. This is buoyed by disputes between President Jacob Zuma and the Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan. The decision by government to appoint President Jacob Zuma as the chair of a board that will oversee state-owned entities, a position that was previously filled by the Finance Ministry, has raised concerns related to the previous warnings by ratings agencies, and this regarding prudent management of the South African SOEs. Yesterday, Futuregrowth, one of South Africa's largest asset managers, announced that it would stop lending to South Africa's largest SOEs as a result of concerns related to the management of those entities. Meanwhile, the volatility in the currency has not only seen the currency weaken R1.50 to the dollar, but the price of insuring against default, which is the credit default swap spread, has widened as a result, making the rand a costlier investment for foreigners particularly. Many foreign investors are selling rand against other emerging markets to lock in returns as a result of the South African political uncertainty. Right, now that we know where we stand, I'd like to welcome John and Luke. Thank you so much for joining me again.
Thank you.
Let's quickly just touch on the Fed decision last week, the announcement by Janet Yellen. The market was waiting in anticipation for that, John. So just give us your view. Has anything changed dramatically? Are they starting to warm the market up to the idea that it is going to happen this year? What is your feeling?
Yeah, so your second statement, they're warming us up, they're preparing the way for a rate hike. I don't think they themselves have decided when they're going to hike. Is it September or December? That's probably down to this week's payroll figure. Our house view at RMB is still December. I think that's where the betting is. But the story is clear. If they come ahead, if that is strong in the hike in September, then the rand's going to come under pressure. Of course, it's the Gordhan story making most of the rand moves, but the Fed fears and dollar strength have maybe added 20 cents or 25 cents to the dollar rand upside as well.
So we've got that in the back burner to consider. Luke, talk to us about this issue with regards to foreigners and how they're viewing South Africa at the moment. So we've got a couple of things in the pot. We're parking Brexit this week because there's nothing really in the news around that. We have had the statement out from Janet Yellen, and as John alluded to, the fact that the market is starting to be warm to the fact that there potentially will be hikes out of the US. However, the rest of the market seems pretty benign. We are starting to see rumblings of things like oil price increases, slowly stopping as much supply, less drilling, these sort of commodity type announcements, as well as data out of China to support commodity prices. What does that mean for foreign investment and the likes of the South African rand?
Well, I think in terms of the oil price, I think what's happened is that the prices has sort of come off a little bit recently, and I think OPEC is obviously trying to stabilize things. So I think their rhetoric is obviously to try and stabilize things. Let's see what actually comes out of it, because there are obviously a couple of different factions within OPEC. I think with South Africa, I think the US raising rates obviously will put pressure on the rand, as John was saying. But it's I think for South Africa at the moment, it's very much about the local political landscape, what's happening. Just as we thought things were getting better and things were starting to calm down, the Hawks bombshell got dropped, and now there's obviously Pravin Gordhan's under the spotlight again. And I think foreigners are looking at that and wondering what's going to happen there. And I think, you mentioned Futuregrowth saying that they were going to curtail their funding of SOEs. I think that's quite a big signal for foreign investors. Obviously, Futuregrowth is based here. They have, perfect sight of the market. And I think foreign investors, although foreign investors aren't necessarily investing in state-owned enterprise bonds, they are investing in South Africa. And so if there are rumblings with the locals, obviously they're going to stand up and take notice. And I think that's what sort of, there was a big hit on the rand yesterday. And I think that's going to be the main theme for the next week or two.
So it's interesting that you say that, John, and maybe you can give us a little bit more insight with regards to, if we look at South Africa's landscape over the last year, we had the Nene Gate at the end of last year. Huge, huge fallout on the rand. We then saw Pravin Gordhan step in. Everybody likes Pravin. Yes, he didn't have the best term, but he certainly made amends if we look at the results that he's shown, meeting with foreign rating agencies, meeting with business, trying to rectify the issues within the South African economy. However, in the last week and a half, since we've had this result from the elections, we've literally seen a chair being put in place to override the position of the Finance Ministry, and we've seen this re-erection of this supposed Hawks insight into what's happening at when Mr. Gordhan was in executive at the SARS. Now, the fallout from that with regards to how the ratings agencies view our SOEs as being one of our risks to the downgrade of our country's sovereign rating, surely this is not prudent types of management that we should be seeing out of the politicians.
Oh, sure. So our political risk premium is going up. That's in the CDS spreads that you read out earlier. You see it in rising bond yields. You see it in the weakness in the rand. The way we're seeing things at RMB is, of course, there are lots of political scenarios you can sketch. I mean, from even Zuma going after an early elective conference to Gordhan going. But if you just simplify it into its three simplest categories, we'd say either Gordhan goes or he stays, or probably the most likely scenario in our case is that he stays but with no clarity over his position. So exactly as we saw after February, the Hawks come ahead and make these allegations and then the news just disappears. And that's probably where we sit at the moment. We just wait without knowing, is Gordhan going to be cleared? Is he going to be charged? And perhaps we're going to be in that environment. So the views we're sketching at RMB is...
So are you saying they're putting a gauntlet over his head?
Yeah, look, he's, well, I mean, what we want to know is he going to be removed from office or not? Okay, there have been some political analysts that earlier this year suggested he may want to retire. His most recent statement suggested that that's not the case. So he would actually have to be removed by the president, and presumably the laying of charges would give the president the opportunity to do that. So if that worst case does play out, I mean, we're sucking numbers now, but we're putting it figure down as 18 on dollar rand for two reasons. One, that's the obvious resistance level because that's all-time high. Secondly, in terms of percentage movements from where we were, say, a week ago, it would be similar to other major political events in South Africa and how the rand reacted. If Gordhan, probably in the unlikely case, can completely clear his name, so if the charges are dropped, then we're looking, testing down to that 1350, 1320. And in our base case, which is that nothing happens, he's neither cleared nor charged, then we just bumble along, probably ending the year at 15, which is our base case at the moment.
But the big question is, I mean, we're going to be coming up to December again soon, and we're looking at the ratings agencies reviewing our credit rating. A lot of hard work was put in at the beginning of this year to allay the fears of the ratings agencies, try to prove that the right things have been put in place. Business came on board. We saw the results of the local elections, all speaking to support for what the ratings agencies were asking of us. However, this recent move to take over the running of the SOEs and asking the correct questions with regards to management of these types of funds, specifically when it's government guarantees in place. Luke, maybe just talk to us about how that perception plays out in the mind of a foreign investor.
Yeah. No, look, I think the ratings agencies are watching us very, very closely. I think, as you said, Pravin Gordhan went on the roadshow. It was all about how he was going to, take control and put everything right, essentially. And the international markets accepted that and took it on board. I think with everything that's happening and the power that he's losing, and it's clear that there's a power struggle happening, and the power that's being diverted away from him, it's a major issue for the ratings agencies. So I think it's very much it's a wait and see game to see how it plays out. I think if he stays in his position and has the authority to do what he was put there to do, I think we won't get a downgrade. I
But
think
that's changing
but that
fast.
is changing fast, and
Yeah.
I think, you know, if he does get ousted, I think, you know, as John was saying, you know, massive rand weakness. I think we could well get downgraded on the back of that because of all the uncertainty and because of the nature of how things are developing with Zuma chairing that committee for, you know, taking the power from the Finance Ministry and allowing him to sort of dish out the cash.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, John, before we move on to taking the view for the week, just quickly give our viewers an oversight of if the rand continues on the trajectory that it's doing, what the impact on inflation will be, and also is this future growth decision something that potentially could start a domino effect across the other asset managers within South Africa?
Yeah, so the rand's a major driver of inflation always. If the rand continue, well, we've got 15 as a rand forecast, which implies that inflation in our view comes down to 5.4%. If you start pushing your dollar rand numbers up towards 18, then we can possibly have the inflation rate above the 6% target next year, which would then imply probably 1 or 2 more interest rate hikes in the cycle. If I could just quickly add to Luke's comment on the ratings. So if Zuma goes, we have already think a rating downgrade to junk is on the cards. If Gordhan goes, if Gordhan, very important distinction there, right? So if Gordhan goes, we actually think we could get 2 downgrades, and we think S&P would narrow the gap between the local currency and the foreign currency rating, which would probably mean that we'd lose investment grade status on the local currency rating sometime next year, meaning that we start to lose our inclusion in the WIGB and the other important bond indices.
Yeah, that's a massive downplay. Okay, guys, I'm going to hand you over now. Just think about it quickly in terms of your view for the week ahead. Give us some nice ranges that we can work on, and possibly if you can include the other currencies as well. Okay, I'm going to give it to you, Luke. You can start.
So I think on dollar rand, the 14.10 level is a key level, 14.13, which could come down to 13.80. This is obviously assuming that things sort of start playing out sort of relatively calmly. I think it is a bit of a crapshoot in terms of what political news is going to come out, and that's going to really drive it. So I'd say, you know, the range at the moment probably sort of the 14.10 to 14.80 level. On the pound, I think it's all going to be driven by the rand again. I think the Brexit fears have calmed. The pound's very stable against the dollar, it's sort of 131. So I think with the pound, we're looking at probably about the sort of 1890 up to sort of 1970 kind of thing. And then euro, I don't really have a big view on at the moment. I think we'll see what happens with the euro banks, whether that sort of story comes out again, but it seems to have died back.
Okay, John?
Yeah, so I'd go a bit higher on my levels than Luke, but let me answer your question another way. In my opinion, importers in South Africa should always be covered. We've got this history that the rand can blow out, and clearly we're in a situation where something can happen and you can be at 18 or choose a number very, very quickly. I think it would be very dangerous for importers to be greedy, not to be hedged, not to have some protection on the blowout. The exporters is obviously the opposite position. So those exporters who can use option structures, I think the way to do it is the participation forwards. You certainly don't want to go into the collars because they would lock you in, cap your upside. So exporters, either doing those parts, if you can do those structures, or probably to the extent that your mandates allow, remaining open and allowing you that best case scenario.
And locking in some of the move.
Perhaps I shouldn't call it a best case scenario if the rand goes to 18, but you know what I mean. For exporters, it would be a favourable currency move at least.
Right, thank you so much. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, John. So just in conclusion for the week, we are looking for the upside remaining intact with regards to further weakness. We're watching strongly what's happening on the political front in South Africa, as that is the key driver across all the currencies, and particularly dollar rand. Our analysts looking for importers to be very cautious in this environment and potentially cover yourselves. However, if you'd like to send any comments or questions, you're more than welcome to do so at CNBC Africa, #CurrencyWars410, or to myself at Kaon Capital for your personal response to the FX markets. Until next week, good luck in the trenches.